With head football coach Tony Sanchez, Adam Young with you. Coach, spring ball in full swing. How have things gone from your perspective so far?
I'm pleased with where we're at right now. I mean, it's been a really good group as far as, just their attention to detail, competitiveness, just coming in prepared every day, attacking every day the way they should, creating championship habits. So I'm excited about the group. I mean, I think we've done another good job of recruiting. Love the fact that these guys are going to be here the entire year. Yeah. So we know that all the investment we're making right now is all going to pay off later on in the fall. So again, there's a long way to go, but I like the detail-oriented group we have right now, and again, the competitiveness of the group.
Yeah, with the one transfer portal window rule change, how comforting is that from your seat?
Well, it's huge. You just go back the last couple of years and you put all this investment into the spring, post-recruiting, you get your guys here, you start talking about culture, lineman assignment technique, and, doing it the Aggie way. And then you get into, the latter part of April and early May, and there's a massive seismic shift within the program. You have, anywhere from 15 to 20 guys moving on, and, I know last year it was 9 of them were starters. So this year we know that, hey, all the investment we're making, the guys that are here, the culture that we're talking about, riding for the brand, doing all these things the right way, that can bleed on into the summertime and bleed on into fall camp and then into the season. So again, I think it's really healthy culture-wise.
Has there been a position group that's really stood out so far?
There's a lot that have done some really good things. I think the biggest area that we're different now is the offensive line. Mm-hmm. I think that's the group that's really stood out. We brought some really good guys in. Coach Canova did a really good job of screwing down and going out and recruiting and getting into some recruiting battles. But we like the group right now. We had some talented guys coming back, and I think the most impressive thing is the group of guys we brought in. We brought in a lot of guys with a lot of career starts. So these are not just talented guys; they're guys that have played a lot of college football, and you're starting to see that translate right now later in the spring ball.
Coach Yost was telling us too that a lot of these guys are kind of moving around in the offensive line. You're trying to figure out where they fit best, and having that depth is so important.
Yeah, last year, you saw some of it, and in certain aspects we were limited in certain ways. We moved guys around. We want to make sure we go in. I mean, we're going to have our starting 5, but heck, our left guard might be our backup center. We've got guys who can swing at the tackle spot, multiple guys who can play on the inside. So right now we'll get Lee back too. He's been out this spring with the knee injury, but we'll get him back. So we're excited about that. But we feel like there's going to be 8 or 9 guys that are all capable of starting when we get done with fall camp. So that's pretty good. A year ago we were trying. We were probably at 2 or 3. And then you had a transfer portal, so you're kind of at 2 guys that you really knew you can count on. And so this year being at 8 or 9. Knock on wood, you want to stay healthy, but we feel like we got some guys that can swing at the center spot, swing at the guard spot, swing at the tackle spot, and stay healthy.
Is it a healthy competition right now, quarterback?
It really is. I mean, obviously, with Adam coming on back, he had, he understood the offense, and he probably started off a little bit faster as far as just, being able to consume all of it. And he's done a really good job throughout the course of spring. Trey Hedden's been fantastic. I mean, some of the throws that he's capable of making, they're really high level, And the one thing that I really enjoy about him is his competitiveness, his attention to detail, his true love for the game, the way he practices, the way he competes every single day. Again, that group's been really, really good. Kalani, coming on in after, a stellar, 1 year at, DVC. It's funny because he started off a little slow. Things were moving a little fast. And I remember talking to Yost, and I'm just like, hey, we got to remember, he's in the spring of his true freshman year. So, he's still a young buck, and he's probably got the most arm talent of the 3. So, I think those guys give us a great shot. We'll bring a walk-on in, and we'll bring one more scholarship guy in. So we'll have now with the 105 cap, we'll keep that room at 5 quarterbacks, but we do need to bring a couple more in just for have some arms in there. But the 3 guys we have right now, I think it's as good as we've had here in a long time.
You brought back key pieces at running back, but you also added some really good talent at running back too. Do you like the options you have in that room?
Yeah, Jones and Washington have been outstanding. A year ago we were really limited. Dijon, he'd never really, been the guy that toted the rock the majority of the time at Utah, so coming on over, learning how to be an every down guy. He came in probably at 165 pounds. There were some physical things we needed to fix. Now he's sitting there weighing 185, 189 pounds. He's got a year under his belt. He's ready to go. James Jones is a high-level player. We've had some guys here that have had the ability and will have the ability to play on Sundays. James is in that category. Washington's still an underclassman guy, hasn't had a ton of carries, but the ones he's had at Iowa have been good. You've seen the work ethic just translate from that program over to here right now. Does a great job pass pro, great job catching balls out of the backfield. So those 3 guys right now have really kind of, set the bar really high in that room.
You watch the NFL Combine and you see Aggie running backs all over the place, which is really cool to see. The amount of attention nationally that you guys are getting, especially with the running back room in general, do you feel like it's attracting top talent here in the running back room?
You know, it is, and really, it's more than just running back room's kind of at the forefront now. But when you look at guys that went to the SEC at offensive tackle, you've got guys in the Big 12 that started at safety and linebacker. Obviously, you have some running backs, you got quarterbacks, you have a tight end who's going to be probably the 2 or 3 tight end taken in the draft. You know, so it's really spread out, you know, all over the place. You know, and some of the guys aren't going to get drafted. Even when you look at the amount of guys who were impactful on their teams last year at that Power 4 level, I mean, they're all over the place. You know, at every position group. So yeah, I think the high profile ones right now is the running backs, just because of their draft status and things like that. But yes, no, I mean, Coach Cobb's done a really good job. But even you go back to Golly and with Star Thomas and Giovanni Jones, and we've kind of just had a niche right here to bring in great backs. Cobb's continued that, and I think that last year was tough. Again, when you lose a guy in January, you can recover. You lose a guy at the end of the spring, it's tough. And I don't know if we recovered last year. This year, kind of being able to breathe a little bit, bringing in Washington Jones, he did a phenomenal job of that.
The explosiveness, the amount of playmakers you have at wide receiver, it's very attractive on paper. What have you seen so far in spring ball?
Well, we know the usual suspects. King's going to do well again. Bodie Malone. Again, he was a freshman last year. We feel like he's a high-level guy. But guys like Miles Liebman, who came over from Stanford, he's just been outstanding, done a great job. He's battling to be a starter right now. Excited about that. A.J. Williams, he was a projected starter going into last year, had the surgery, missed the entire season. So now you have Kim coming back with multiple years to go, but he's another big 6'3/6'4" guy, who can stretch the field. Excited about that. I could go on and on about that room. I mean, they've just done a really good job. So we're excited about that, and I know the quarterbacks are benefiting from it. So it's going to be a good deal.
Brody had such a good freshman year for you guys. The ability to keep him, how important was that?
It was huge, and quite honestly, you got to make some business decisions. It's different. I mean, that's something that's completely different now, being a head coach in this day and age. I do a lot of the decision making as far as where we're going to go ahead and put the resources. I let my coaches do the evaluation stuff. They bring them to me, and I'll give them the okay, yay or nay on it. But when it comes down to where we're going to put our resources, that's one of the hardest jobs I have right now. And we felt like, based on the guys we had coming back last year, we needed Brody back. We put some resources into him and King, and I think it'll translate and hopefully to a couple more wins. We're cautiously optimistic, but we're excited.
Gavin Harris got so much attention last year because of his stats in the tight end room, but that room was really deep. We watched Joshua go and shine on the practice field, in scout team. You guys had 5 or 6 options at tight end. Do you like the depth you have again this year?
We love it. We had one season-ending injury actually before we got into practice, so that was unfortunate. But with Jerry Lydiot back now, he had a surgery, missed the end of the season last year. So having him back, and then Thomas, he's been outstanding. From Western Carolina. I mean, he's had as good of a spring as I've seen. He might be the best receiving tight end since Stowers that's been in this program.
Wow.
So he's dynamic. He's different. We haven't had a guy like that since Eli. So it'll be exciting to have him in there. And then Carson's done a great job. He's a guy that was kind of a big-time quarterback coming out of high school. He transitioned from quarterback to the tight end position at Oklahoma State, came over here. And I tell you what, these last couple of weeks, just watching him grow, it's been outstanding. So we've got some good options in that room. Again, you got to knock on wood, you got to stay healthy. But I like where it's at now, and then we just got to keep on working throughout the course of the summer.
What has you excited about the defense right now?
That's where you return the majority of your experience. I think a year ago when it came back to Division I, like returning experience, we were like 120 something. I think this year we're like 77, 76, something like that. So we've jumped up a bunch of spots there. And the reason for that is mostly defense. We return, you've got guys like, Gabe Peterson, Bradley Vaselli, and both those guys have not competed in spring. But Gabe has a little bit, but he's been out most of the time. But those guys are, plug-and-play starters coming back from last year. So it's forced a lot of other guys to get reps. So I'm excited about the defensive front. Kyan Roberts Day is outstanding. I mean, his twitch, you lose a guy like Ezra, and you go, how do you replace that? And you don't know if you can. And then all of a sudden, you recruit a guy like this, and he's been outstanding. I think he'll do a great job of coming on and filling that void really fast. Henry Davis, another guy who's got a bunch of snaps under his belt. And then you got your 2 inside linebackers from last year returning, and then you have Zayden Davis who's nipping at their heels right now, fighting for, to be a starter. You get guys like Barnes to come on back. He was an all-conference guy. You lose a safety to Colorado, and then you bring him in, and you go like, wow, okay, we have an opportunity to kind of plug and play and replace that immediately, so we're excited about that. Sessions returning, Burnock Aya, again, guys who were starters last year. Josiah Charles starting at corner, coming on back. And Peters, DeMarcus Peters coming on in. I mean, he's done a great job here in camp. Lorenzo Smith, again, a returning guy. Sometimes, you need that extra year, and you're starting to see him start to elevate a little bit. So I like where we're at. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I didn't mention that are doing a great job, but I think overall that group's just got a lot of game experience, in the Aggie uniform, which is a big deal.
Building depth, is that a big part of what you're trying to do right now defensively during the spring?
It is. It's funny because when you listen to coaches around the country, that's probably the biggest thing that most schools struggle with nowadays, just because of the volatility of the transfer portal and the resources you have, right? I know the big schools are always complaining, for years and years they kind of had a lock on being 3 deep. Now they don't necessarily, because guys want to go play and they have the ability to get paid and go play, right? So I think we're in a much better spot than we were a year ago. I think we got the right guys to stay that we needed to. We still have some young developing offensive linemen. We got some young developing defensive guys. I think we were able to retain, that's the one thing, the investment the university's made in, in revenue share that we needed to, helped us retain a lot of guys and go ahead and bring some good talent in. So I think we're much better than we were a year ago when it comes to depth. At the same time, you don't want to lose any of those key guys. You kind of got a little NFL situation going on now. You have some special guys you've invested in. You got to keep them healthy.
In the kicking game, a lot of new faces, but also a lot of experience. What excites you about that group?
I tell you what, again, there's some experience coming on back, but love the guys we brought in. When you look at the kicker spot, bringing the young man from Utah, was Utah Tech. I mean, it was Utah Tech now, right? It used to be
Utah
a different
Tech now,
school,
yeah.
right? Yeah. But he's done an outstanding job in camp. I mean, he's pretty consistent from 45 in. He can drill them from 52 to 54, 55. So he gives you the ability to move the field around a little bit. So we're excited about that, and brought another young man in from Minnesota who's a punter and done a great job with a 12-game starter at UCLA. Went over to Minnesota. They went to more of a rugby punt. So, we're bringing him in and, watching the way he's been able to kick throughout the course of camp, I think we're going to be good there. So we're excited about those guys. And obviously those are kind of pressure spots, we got to see how they handle it when the lights are on. But those guys have kicked in big games before, just never kicked here. But anytime we recruit a kicker, we talk about elevation, right? The ball flies a little bit here. So that's a good thing.
Year 3 now with Coach Morris as your DC, year 2 for Coach Yost as the OC. Having that continuity, how much has that helped during spring ball?
It's big. I mean, we didn't have a lot of turnover in the coaching staff this year, which was good. Jared Hensley took over, the reins of special teams coordinator, but he's a guy that I'm familiar with, that's been around, and he's been involved in special teams, so that was really good. So it's not like we brought somebody from the outside in to run that. Taylor Mazzoni's been around the program for the last couple of years. He's been an on-the-field coach at Texas A&M, Arizona, UCLA, so more than capable to do it. So we elevated him. So really, we brought one guy in, Sadiq Haynes, from UTSA, and Sadiq's a phenomenal coach, helped us recruit some really good guys. So we're excited about that. But bringing Yost back with the rest of the offensive staff, elevating Mazzoni, I mean, the continuity there is perfect, and then defensively, just having Morris for 3 years now, the guys know him, they know his demeanor, the majority of his staff is back, both guys in the secondary, Hensley. So again, there's a lot of continuity between players and coaches now.
Lastly, Coach, earlier we talked about McGowan and we talked about Washington being at the NFL Combine, and your staff, deservedly so, has been getting a lot of pub for the job you've done recruiting and also developing players among the Group of 5 programs around the country. What's been the key to getting that done?
Evaluations. I mean, the whole thing is we do a really honest job about evaluation. We looked at recruitability, number one. Who are the guys that we have an opportunity to get. I think you look at the resources you have to go acquire some of these players, and I see a lot of guys that overpay for guys. They get in these recruiting battles. You got to know when to walk away. And I think we've done a really good job of identifying talent that makes sense to come here to Las Cruces, New Mexico State. And then understanding the resources that we have and what we don't have, and not being afraid to walk away. So we've been able to get, the hardest thing is retention, but the biggest thing that we're excited about, and again, that's why I say cautiously optimistic, is the last couple of years, if you take away the spring portal, we live entirely different seasons. I mean, entirely different. We're fighting for conference championships multiple years in a row, right? And we just struggled. We struggled to recover from those things. But then if you look at the amount of resources that we've actually put into it, compared to our peers in Conference USA, we're at the bottom of the barrel, you know. So now we're not at the bottom of the barrel. We're in a competitive place right now. There is no spring portal. I think we've done a good job of evaluating, and you know, I think we're going to see that translate into a more successful season.
I do want to finish on FanFest, Coach.
Yeah.
April 10th, 4 until 6. FanFest will kind of conclude spring ball for you guys. Fans get a chance to come out here. What can they expect when they come out here?
You know, a family-friendly atmosphere. You know, I think there's not enough opportunities to come out and actually meet the players, get to know who they are, you know, kind of see inside that face mask. So you know, I think you're going to come out there that day. You're going to get an opportunity to see all these guys run around. There's going to be a lot of interactive stuff with kids and players. You're going to see some fun stuff to go on out there. You know, you'll see some old linemen try to catch punts, and you'll see a little combine-ish quarterback, you know, display. I think you might even see some guys try to make some goals against our soccer team and vice versa. So we're going to do some fun things out there, but the biggest thing is it being interactive and having the fans the ability to kind of get out and see some of the skill sets, but at the same time, you know, get to interact with the players, get to interact with the coaches. And again, this is a phenomenal community. The more we can bring it together, the better.
Coach, appreciate the time as
Appreciate
always.
you. Go
Aggie
Aggies.
football head coach Tony Sanchez.